All right, let's do, while they're cut up the road outside, let me just do a very quick check-in with an autobiography by Anthony Trollope, where it's very much, it's as I've said before, it's a writer's, it's a writer autobiography. It's more of an autobiography of his writing than it is of the man himself. He shies away. I think at one point he's like he mentions his wife, but that's like no, that's kind of between me and my wife. And same thing with kind of his kids. They're there that he has some, but we're not going to get into that deeply. It's more about his writing. He finds he's not really well set to be someone who wants to be a journalist. In that he doesn't like being set other tasks to do. He does not like being edited for kind of his content, because an editor is basically ultimately responsible for what gets published. In that sense, versus like a novel writer where you can say, well, it's Anthony Trollope's work, so I don't have to worry about it. It's like, no, this is coming in the Pall Mall, so I have to kind of be sensible that way. The section that I have just gone through is very much about well, it's like building up a name for himself. He does actually do a thing where he's like, well, I think my writing stands on its own, and he actually does publish two works with a different name, or just anonymously, and they didn't. He says like, well, they didn't get great notice, but like whenever I actually heard someone talk about them, the people seemed to think they were fine. They weren't put in for horrible criticism, and he kind of sees like, well, I could probably have continued on with this other character and slowly build up another name for myself, but I would get paid less while I was doing it because it was getting less returns. And the public didn't know about, well, there wasn't that brand, there wasn't that person that they would think they could trust, like they could trust, oh, Anthony Trollope, who's now done this number of books and that we go to for this sort of thing. He also made a point of setting them in a foreign place, not English country life or English life in general. So there was that as well. So it's like, though apparently there was a critic that did actually notice that it was him, that they noticed certain phrases that were used. It's like, that's Anthony Trollope, which is like, and so he has that. He goes on to the thing of like, people ask like, should I become a writer? Like, read my stuff. He had apparently one person who gave him like a pamphlet, and he wanted him to kind of deliver his opinions. Like, I do not want to do that, because it was like a dispute. Like he was writing angrily out of a dispute, and the friend really pressed it upon him, and so finally he did, like, fine, I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna be honest because that's how I am. I just call it like I see it. And he did, and it completely ruptured their friendship. And he was, so it's like, I was probably extra hard because I was pissed off that this guy had forced me to do this. But it did finally kind of get a reconciliation between him and the guy. His wife brought them together at the end before the guy died. There's also a thing in here of people asking like, oh, I want to become a writer, like any advice, or like, oh, here's my manuscript. And he's like, look, the best advice you usually give anybody is, if you're a woman, go darn your socks, and if you're a guy, go find a stool in a counting house, go find an actual job. And yeah, there might be the odd one that's like, oh, you might be squashing the next great man, great person of literature, but for the majority, that actually is quite sound advice to go off and do something else. And even if you are great, don't give up your day job, kids, or have a actual job. If he says, like, using my own example, it took me like 12-15 years to make this actually a paying concern, that I was actually being able to pay for the paper and the ink that I was spending on. So having a proper job was a good thing. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's going to be extra hard to do it because you've got two full-time jobs instead of just the one. But you'll actually have supported means. he kind of ends by, it's like, look, this is a profession where, like, when it's success, it is super sweet, but of professions, like, failing in writing is like the worst. It's what does he say? The career when successful is pleasant enough, certainly, but when unsuccessful, it is of all careers the most agonizing. And yeah, I mean, talking about, like, the bitterness. He is head of the Royal Literary Fund, which I'm assuming is helping kind of destitute authors, and he's going to talk further of that and stuff, but he does talk about how kind of the bitterness of people who are just pouring their heart and soul out, who think they're doing amazing work, but end up needing charity because they can't get anywhere. So it's really sensible advice that Trollope is giving, which is like, it's not the romantic stuff, but it's like, oh, this is really good, solid advice. I'm beginning to think that this is the Victorian equivalent of Stephen King's On Writing, which was King giving his writing advice, but also mixing it with a bit of biography. This is far more heavy spoiler for all of Trollope's novels. I don't think this is something that it's a tough thing of, like, either you don't care about Trollope novels, so you're fine reading it, though then there's a lot of stuff you just wouldn't care about, and then there's that if you're a true Trollope head, then it's like, do you need to have read all of the Trollope novels to do it? I don't think so. I haven't read all the Trollope novels. I haven't felt horribly spoiled yet. And to be honest, I'll probably forget any of the specific details that he says by the time I actually get around to reading the Trollope novels, which I probably will, because I really enjoy Trollope's voice. So yeah, that is me having read all the way up to chapter 11, and chapter 12 is going to be on novels and the art of writing them. So we're getting kind of like, okay, here I am progressing in my career, but he does take diversions to just have like little kind of essays on writing, on the success of writing, on the hard grind of writing, on his methods of writing novels. He's just tracking the word count and getting the words in each day, and his successes and his failures, things that he considers successes, things like he always accepts, like, yeah, look, this wasn't popular, it just didn't work for the public, I accept that, though I still think that it has some kind of you can still see that kind of the writerly, but I think this actually does have positive qualities to it and stuff like that. But he also seems to be very much like, I don't know if anyone's going to be reading these books a year or two after I've published them, much less after my death. He's very kind of sanguine, and you get the sense that he's pretty detached from that. He doesn't, he'd probably like it if they lived on, but he also kind of understands that's not within his power of control. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.